VikesNow. I am Dustin Baker. We are here on March 5th, 6 days away from free agency's legal tampering, which is truly when the action starts. I'm here with Paul Charchian, who's been a guest about 2 years ago. How are you, kind sir?
Yeah, what do I got to do to be in just even an annual rotation? I mean, you do a lot of these, and I get it once every 2 years, and in the depths of the off season. It's an insult.
All right. Well, in about a week, when I message you to come back on, you're going to be like, oh, what did I do? I'll be picking your brain weekly, and you'll be like, hold on, bro. Can we go back to the off-season grind? Yeah. All right, Josh, how are you, man?
I'm doing good. Free agency about to kick off here in a few days. Finally getting some real off-season stuff going, so it's an exciting time.
Yeah, it is percolating. And I'm guessing you've heard Paul on K-Fan for most of your adult life, so I think it's your first time meeting him, yes?
Yeah, it sure is, yeah.
Thank you for listening. Appreciate that. We value all our listeners, even Josh.
Hey, I'll take it.
All right, we're going to launch right into this, Paul. Last night, it felt like Kirk Cousins themed rumors hit a boiling point vis-a-vis Mike Florio. Kind of said the writing is on the wall that this dude is going to the Falcons. So as a starter kit, I want to know, before last night or even today, do you endorse Cousins sticking around for a year or two to complete this competitive rebuild?
Well, I do for two reasons. One is I don't know that there's a quarterback at 11 that's requisite of that pick. So I think you're going to be reaching at 11 if you do take a quarterback. And 9 times out of 10, that second tier of quarterback that you go reach for, you get Kenny Pickett. You don't. It just, those are guys where they're only being selected because of the position that they play at that spot. And I think that's what the Vikings would be doing at 11. If you believe it's going to be JJ McCarthy, which is seems to be the almost universal sentiment. I think even as recently as a month ago, there were people mocking him to the roughly pick 40 of the draft, and now he's being mocked at pick 11 or higher. And I just think it's what desperate teams do. The Vikings were in this position several times in the past, and they've fumbled this spot before. And I worried that they'd ultimately end up making a pick that they regret. So I think Cousins, I'm not at all worried about the Achilles. It doesn't concern me, frankly, whatsoever. He says he's already fully healed. I think that is probably close to correct. And I know that it's not as simple as just saying, well, this is a long answer, by the way. Sorry about this.
That's all good.
I know it's not as simple as just saying, well, he was never fleet of foot to begin with, which is true. And we're not taking away from the fundamentals of his game. Other people are like, well, you can't, that bad foot, you can't plant and throw on it. You know what? He's going to be fine. I really don't. By the time meaningful games roll around in September, that thing's going to be in great shape. And that doesn't worry me at all. So, if you're going to do some kind of a bridge quarterback situation, why not bridge it with Kirk, a guy that gives you a legitimate chance to win games? I don't like the idea of trying some Russell Wilson, some rehash bit. Just if you're going to do that, then just fold it up and go every single pick of this draft to take a quarterback. I don't know. It's just, I don't love it. So, you won't be shocked to learn I endorse keeping him. Then you roll the dice in the second round on Michael Penix or some other quarterback. I'd want a day 2 or day 3 pick, a quarterback that you think has got the arm talent to ultimately be a starter in the NFL. And then let's see what we got in that kid in 2 years. So that's my best case scenario. Now I want to add in the X factor on this and why I think they will not sign Kirk. What Billy Beane has said about Josh Allen applies 100% to Kwesi. Kwesi's out of strikes. Billy Beane said, and I've got the quote right here, I got criticized for how much we gave up for Josh Allen. And I'm like, well, if he doesn't work out, I'm not going to be here anyway. And if he does work out, nobody's going to give a shit. So that's what Kwesi's at, right? So Kwesi's had, I think, without doubt, the worst 2-year run of any GM in Vikings history, that at least my history. If we go back and list Kwesi accomplishments, it's a pretty thin list. And if we look at his misses, it's a long list. So he's got to make a career defining move right here that saves him. And signing Kirk probably isn't that move. That's the safe move. The career-defining move is you get the quarterback of the future. That's how general managers have longevity in this league, is they hitch their wagon to a young quarterback who turns into the franchise guy, and now you're set for a decade. You get that, and you're set, and I think that's what Kwesi has to do to save his job. So I think that's what he's going to ultimately end up doing. Sorry. So again, there's a 5-minute answer to a 5-second question. Sorry.
It quite literally was a 5-minute answer, but I'm here for it. In the first part of your answer, you talked about the realism of Penix in round 2 or whatnot. Do you think it's realistic for Kwesi to make that Bean move where he trades up with the Patriots Commanders, or do you just think that's not really feasible?
No, I don't think because those teams need quarterbacks. So, okay, the Bears, if you're Ryan Poles, you don't want to be known as the general manager who passed on Caleb Williams for the rest of your life, because that is how you get out of the league, right? You do that, you're fired. If assuming Caleb Williams turns into the guy that we, almost everybody projects him to be. So that's how you get fired, and that's why they're going to take a quarterback. Washington Patriots, they both are desperate at the position. I was a Sam Howell supporter, but he does not look, based on what we saw particularly in December last year, he's not the long-term answer. At least not right now. And maybe there's some other scenario here where he gets back to relevancy when he doesn't absorb like 12 sacks a game. But those two teams are just too desperate at the position. You can't give up enough to go up and get him. I'll say this again, Kwesi's desperate. He won't be here anyway if you give up a bunch of picks. So there is, I think he'd be more willing than most to give up 3 first-rounders in 2 seconds to go make that move. But I still don't know if you can get those teams to budge.
Okay. And do you formally predict that Cousins leaves to the Falcons or otherwise?
I do. This has been this is what I've been saying all offseason. There's just too much demand for quarterbacks from middle tier teams that aren't drafting in a position to take one, whether it's the Falcons, the Vikings, the Raiders, the Steelers. They don't have the draft spot equity and they want to solve now. I think there's going to be just too much demand out there. So, yeah, Falcons, everybody's attaching to the Falcons, but let's remember the Broncos would make a ton of sense. Steelers would make a ton of sense. So, there are other potential players lurking in the weeds here too.
Okay. And we should I would think, have a verdict on Monday or Tuesday. So we're not far away from this grand crescendo on the Cousins sweepstakes. All right, Josh, what do you got for Paul? Oh, sorry, Paul.
Well, and then we go right back to doing what we were for most of my adult life, heading into the draft, hoping that we can get a solution at the quarterback position. Sucks.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to taking McCarthy, but it would have to be at 11. I don't really feel comfortable trading up to get a guy like that. And again, even if you go get him, you still have positions of need all over this roster, and particularly at that edge spot. Danielle Hunter, another guy heading towards free agency. I think personally, out of the three of him, Cousins, and Jefferson, I think that Hunter is the guy that would be least likely to get a contract with the Vikings, just because he most certainly can go out on the open market and get money elsewhere. So I want to ask you, Paul, what do you think is going to end up happening with Danielle Hunter? Do the Vikings get a deal done with him, whether it be in the next few days or during free agency, or does he head elsewhere, and which team would he go to?
Not knowing whether or not the Vikings have to commit $46 million a year to Kirk Cousins really alters that conversation a lot. Obviously, if they don't have to, that makes it a lot more plausible. And I think they would at that point, because outside of quarterback, your second biggest team need. If I'm looking correctly over Dustin's shoulder here, the second biggest team need is edge rusher. Hey, so yeah,
boom.
If you don't have to pay that quarterback, and by the way, I see it the exact same way. Although I put corner at number 3, but that's just me.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, we can have that debate, but go ahead.
Yeah. So that's if you've got all that spare money that comes from not getting Kirk, although then you take that dead cap hit, which is very real. I think Daniel's in play at that point, and I think he would stay. Then you got to sell Jefferson, of course. If you don't keep Kirk, you got to sell Jefferson on your vision of quarterback. He has said he wants to know what his quarterback situation is going to be. So you're going to have to sell him that your solution to quarterback, who isn't Kirk, the man who is going to land him the highest paid contract in the history of non-quarterback contract in the history of the league, is with him gone, that you've still got a way to get Justin Jefferson the ball on a regular basis and not turn this into what we saw in November and December of last year.
If Hunter is back, or even if he is not, who do you have in mind as the other edge from free agency? I'm guessing, or I guess you could say the draft as well.
Well, the draft, Byron Murphy in the draft is pretty interesting. And I think he's in play at that spot. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's somebody that ends up gets picked right in the rough area of where the Vikings are selecting. And I haven't broken down the position in detail, although I have looked up. Let me get this pronunciation if I can get this right, because I've got it over here. Leia Latua. I don't have it in front of me. Latu. Leia Latua Latu. You guys know who I'm talking about?
Latu, yeah.
Yeah, I've got it. Here it is. Yeah, Leatu Latu. Yeah,
got it.
Yeah, I've watched some of him, and when he's healthy, he looks great. But the co-host of Fantasy Football Weekly, Thor Nystrom, tells me he thinks the medicals on him are going to be bad enough to push him well past 11. We'll see.
Yeah, we had Thor on a couple weeks ago, and that's the dude that knows his stuff. So if he said it, if he said it, it's probably correct. All right, so we've got the Cousins prediction, probably vamoosing elsewhere. We think if Cousins is gone, Hunter will be back. This one probably not quite as juicy, but in tugging at our heartstrings, what about Harrison Smith? Do you think that's a retirement, a pay cut, or joining a Super Bowl contender?
I think if there's a redo at quarterback, no bouts.
Okay.
I think that might be enough to get him to say, you know what, I'm not interested in a rebuild at his age. And if Kirk's back, then I think you can sell as hey, we're playing to win. We brought back Kirk. We're playing to win this year. And I think it's a much more compelling case. So I think a lot of it rests with whether or not he feels like this team is rebuilding. So he doesn't, at his age, why does he want to sit through a 4-win season with a quarterback who's who's learning on the job and losing on the job, right? So that's what I think would go. Now, working in Harrison Smith's favor, man, did it look like he had the most fun he had in years last year, right? The way that they deployed him, oh man! I mean, there was some classic Harrison Smith in the way that they utilized him in this new defense, and I want to believe that's a compelling reason to stay. But I think it's largely going to be the ball's largely going to be in his court, I believe, and we'll see if he feels like this is a team that he wants to hang with. I hope so.
Yeah, when we thought that the Vikings season was salvageable, Hunter was the man that saved it against the Panthers. We talked about how cool that game was for Harrison Smith at 34. That might have been like his best career game, period, let alone the age. I mean, when you go back and look at the numbers, when you removed 5 months from it, it's mind-boggling, the stats that he put in that game. And then the strip fumble that Wanham rumbled for a return. That was a season saver, at least in the moment,
Yeah. Right. I don't remember all of his stats from that game, but
a
lot of tackles.
Yeah,
a lot of tackles. 3 sacks, I think.
Yeah, it was 3. It was 3 sacks. It was the forced fumble. It was like when he puts his head on the pillow at night and thinks about his career. That game, in terms of stat sheet stuffing, was up there. So
wow, yeah.
All right, Josh, why don't you ask him about when he was last on 2 years ago, forgive me, you and Ben Lieber told me the same thing about Kellen Mond. You said he was too robotic. He wasn't going to pan out. And I was trying to remain optimistic. You guys were right. I was wrong. So with that said, I'm salivating over your quarterback takes. Josh, why don't you take it away?
Yeah, I mean, I see this as a 3 QB race at the top between Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May. I think you could go 1, 2, 3, basically with any of those 3 guys, and then JJ McCarthy a little bit below him. But how do you see this the year's draft shaking out, Paul?
Well, I mean, I think that's the consensus take, and mine really isn't any different. JJ McCarthy's probably on his own level after those guys. And then I would take, despite the terrible national championship game, my next guy up is Michael Penix, and there are things that you got to figure out with him. You got to really get comfortable with the idea of, when he's out of the pocket, can he throw a pass? Because that is a big question mark on Penix, and the medicals too, right? So you got to get okay with that. And that's something that's I think is gonna be something to watch with him. But I like the pocket passing, and if we've seen anything with Kevin O'Connell, even when he had the mobility of Josh Dobbs at his disposal, didn't use it.
Nope.
I mean, I really think Kevin wants a pocket passer, and it's why Drake May, might be the guy. If there's one of those top 3 that they're going to go try to pay for, you probably can't get all the way up to number 1, and the Bears aren't going to trade in the division anyway. Drake May might be the guy, although Jaden Daniels, I mean, the upside is just sick, right? I don't even want to really think about how much fun we would have watching him as a Viking, because I don't think it's realistic. But Penix can be a really good pocket passer, and of course you get a lot of mobility too. But again, whether or not that's something that really motivates Kevin, I think is pretty unclear. I was talking about this with PA on Friday. So all we've ever seen with Kevin O'Connell is the Kevin O'Connell offense with Kirk Cousins as the trigger man, not counting all the backups that we went through last year, right? The 3 different backups. And so I don't know if we really know, where does the Kevin O'Connell offense end? And what's the Venn diagram of the Kevin O'Connell offense with Kirk and the Kirk Cousins Venn diagram, right? Mm-hmm. How much of what we've seen has just been Kevin molding that offense to the style of his starting quarterback? And how much of that is just actually, it just happened to be an uncanny fit that Kirk Cousins was a guy who was the perfect trigger man for a Kevin O'Connell offense, that it needed a strong arm pocket passer who could make all of his reads and deliver lasers downfield like Kirk did. So we don't know that yet, and so it's a little bit unclear as to whether or not, like on paper, Drake May is like the best fit in this whole draft for what we've seen of a Kevin O'Connell offense. But that doesn't mean that that's really the Kevin O'Connell offense. It just might be that that's the Kevin O'Connell offense under Kirk. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I've spent a lot of time thinking about that. When I hear that O'Connell doesn't know how to use a mobile quarterback, I'm guessing he can figure it out in an off season.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, if he's going to commit to the guy, I'm going to guess it's a little different playbook than Kirk. All right, I have one more thing. I'm not sure if Josh will have one, but I sense more apprehension or anxiety than I expected from you about the Vikings, the path. So let's assume that the Cousins gone rumors are correct. Yeah. What would the Vikings do this off? What could they do to get you utterly optimistic again?
I need to believe that the quarterback that they have a solution at quarterback, that long-term solution. If you're going to give up on Kirk, I need to know, don't give me Baker Mayfield. That's not cool. And I like Baker, and he's an okay quarterback. But man, if you felt like Kirk's ability at quarterback was way too middle of the pack, and you can never get a Super Bowl with Kirk, well, welcome to Baker Mayfield. You're taking a whole step down, right? So that's, or God forbid, Russell Wilson, which would be, disaster, great stuff. Or maybe we have to go dumpster diving and get, like a Desmond Ridder. I mean, you gotta be able to sell me that there's a plausible path for whatever quarterback comes up next to be the quarterback of the future. Because I don't want to go back to the days when the Vikings were shuffling through bad quarterbacks or quarterbacks that other teams had given up on, because we've lived that. Yeah. It was a terrible like 20 years. I don't want to go back to the days of Gus Frerotte and Christian Ponder and Matt Castle and Teddy Bridgewater and Case Keenum and Bradford and Tavares Jackson. That's, no interest in that.
That list is really long. Let's say it's 2 firsts and 2 seconds, and you can have the pick of Jaden Daniels or Drake May. Who are you taking?
I'd take the upside on Daniels.
Okay.
Who I think has got just, you look at how he plays. You get the deep ball, you get the mobility, he is, to me, his like starting point is Lamar Jackson, and it could go up from there. And God, that just, the tantalizing upside that he's got. And but at the end of the day, to be clear, this fan base is so absurdly fixated with quarterback mobility. And if I can only hope that they learned something from the Josh Dobbs experiment, you have to be able to pass. And at the end of the day, if you can't become an elite passer, it doesn't matter how good of a runner you are. I mean, the Ravens are dealing with this whole same thing, 1 seed, and what they got 2 wins, playoff. Not that playoffs are quarterbacks or wins or quarterback stacks. They're not, but Lamar Jackson has had the benefit of not having crap defenses rolling into the playoffs with a top 5 defense every year, and he still only has 2 NFL wins in the playoffs. So, unlike Kirk, who's had to, been laboring into the playoffs with bottom 10, bottom 5 defenses and taking losses. Anyway, the mobility is not as important, but Jaden Daniels has got really impressive arm talent as well. So I would be inclined to go that way. But Drake Mays, man, I mean, if you want a guy who's you can just and Caleb Williams, you want a guy who's just going to walk right into an NFL offense and look so comfortable in the pocket and be able to execute that thing. Drake May's the guy. And I believe, Drake May is somebody that they've had a long time to look at. And the fact that they made some pivotal decisions on Kirk last year. I mean, so, Drake May, we knew Drake May was going to be an elite quarterback at this time last year. And the Vikings didn't extend Kirk. They made this very deliberate decision to let Kirk go to free agency. And it may have been because they had decided, we like Drake May so much, we're going to do, what it takes to get him, one way or another. That's a possible outcome here.
And that's my guy. So I hope that theory is correct. All right, Josh, one more thing for Paul.
Yeah. So we spent a lot of time talking about some of the top free agents on this Vikings team, and there are a lot of them between Hunter, Cousins.
So many.
Who is one guy towards the middle of the pack, say like a Jordan Hicks, Johnny Munt, somebody like that you think that the Vikings really need to bring back for 2024?
Okay. Hang on. I'm looking through my list right now. Marcus No.
I would have shut down the show right there.
Jordan Hicks is a really interesting name, and I think he fits this, but I'll go Dalton Reisner.
Okay.
You don't have a solution at guard if you don't bring back Reisner. And so, I think he's a guy that I would absolutely try to get done. Regardless of all this other stuff, man, we've seen how compromised the Vikings offensive line can be when you've got 2 holes at guard. And honestly, I don't love my right guard either, for that matter. Right. So, and Chris Reed's going to be gone. I don't know if you were going to, if there were ever entertaining thoughts of, I don't know, moving somebody else there. But yeah, I think Reisner fits that. Hicks fits that. Brandon Powell is your utility guy would be a luxury to bring back, don't you think?
That's what I'm thinking, just because they don't have a ton of wide receiver depth, and he led the league in punt returns last year, and that's been a position that the Vikings have struggled to find a real long-term solution at for years. And losing that guy, you not only lose your wide receiver 4, but you also have to go out and find another punt returner again. So I think he'd be near the top of my list too.
All right. Well, I think we solved that.
Yeah.
Let's just bring back Hicks, Reisner, and Powell, and let's go.
Boom.
Bring back everybody with Davenport.
Yeah.
All right, Paul, what is your Twitter handle and your website, the Guillotine Leagues?
GuillotineLeagues.com is we're not even open for business right now, but we will, we will be next month or so. So you can put that, shelve that, but at Paul Charchian, if you like whiskey, video games, board games, me grousing about dumb stuff, getting worked up over nothing. That's where you should go on Twitter, at Paul Charchian.
Sounds like we need to hang out some more, Paul.
More often than once every 2 years.
Well, hey, no, you're really gonna rue this, because I'm gonna invite you back in like a month so we can talk draft, and you're gonna start to roll your eyes that, oh yeah, shit, I said that on the show. Now I got to do this once a month.
Yeah, and I'm really just starting to roll up my sleeves on my draft prep now, because you get out of the football season. And then honestly, I decompress for a couple of weeks, and then I start working on draft stuff, and I'm focused a lot on fantasy positions. So haven't broken down edge very much, haven't broken down tackle and cornerback, which I know we need. And so, but fantasy pays the bills. So I've spent a lot more time on running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, and quarterbacks.
Yeah. Amen.
All right, sir. Drafting a tight end. Just a hunch.
Yeah. All right. We will talk to you in 1 month, and we really appreciate it. Okay, sir?
Deal. Thanks, guys. A lot of fun.
Take it easy. Yep. Later.